Questions. We have tons of them. What if some of those questions can be answered with a simple email? Now is that time, and welcome to Chat with Charlie. Host Stephanie Lynn is a certified spiritual life coach and psychic medium. She will work together with Spirit to answer both your submitted and live questions. Not only will Stephanie be providing you with insight, but also interviews with amazing guests. Now, your host of Chat with Charlie, Stephanie Lynn.
Good morning, everybody. As you can see, Ellie is joining us today in the mix here on WLTK-DB Let's Talk Radio. I know everybody has been so excited and talking about the show and coming up. Everyone's so excited to have you here today, Ellie. So thank you so much for joining.
Oh, well, thank you for having me on. I just froze, so I'm hoping that...
Oh, yeah, you're freezing.
No indication of...
You know, and as Ellie works through her freezing, and maybe, Ellie, if you, good morning, Jackie, pop out and rejoin us, that might help. So maybe disconnecting and coming back. But while Ellie's working out her technical difficulties, let me explain why we're having technical difficulties today. So as you guys know, this is a Chat with Charlie special where at the end of every month, Ellie is joining us, and we're talking about weird news, right? Metaphysical things that are starting to come into mainstream media. And some of those things are really interesting stories. Some of them deal more with negative energies, just weird happenings, things that you do not typically hear about in the news. And so when these things start to happen, and we were having a conversation about it this morning, I actually was sitting here because the first story that we want to discuss, actually, Ellie, is the story of a possession of a family that showed up mainstream. But as Ellie and I were reading this, I was reading through the articles, I was finding more articles this morning, and I actually had sat here because it was something I want to focus on as we talk about this story, is Psalms 91. And as I wrote down Psalms 91 to remember to talk about it in context with the story and things that we go through. Good morning, Jessica. Thank you for tuning in. I kid you not, there was a bang in my house so loud my house shook. I thought maybe my TV fell off the wall. I thought maybe a door upstairs opened and knocked something over. Curiously enough, there was none of that going on. And so, of course, my first call was to Ellie. Hey, I think you need to clear both of our houses. And so we were talking about, good morning, Jessica, how we were going to still talk about this story. And then you froze.
Yeah. They're still around. I can still feel something.
Yes. And what's interesting is even as you're talking, you're cutting out on my end. I don't know if she's cutting out on everybody else's end, but it's just going to be the way today's going to go. So bear with us as we talk about some of these topics. So before we get into this, Ellie, because I know you and I have found a ton. Yeah, Jessica said you had just cut out a ton of these articles where metaphysical weird news, I think what a lot of people would call it. Good morning, Michael. How are you today? Are coming into mainstream, but they're not easy to find.
No, they're not easy to find.
And I think that, and my hope is by us talking about this, it starts to let people, you know, like the first story we're going to discuss, who need resources, know if you dig, if you find these things, that there are resources out there. So the first story, and I will share the link over to our producer so he can share that, guys, with you. Actually has to do with a woman whose house was possessed. And the first article that Ellie and I had read, actually, I'm going to pull it up here. It says, police captain confirms children possessed by demons. And for me, this actually, I found it, which I thought was odd, in the BBC News. And as I don't know if you noticed, Ellie, too, as I've been kind of looking up some of these stories, I find them more prominent in other countries, that they're in mainstream versus here.
I have to agree on that. I was kind of surprised. Some of them I was coming up with were, I even have one from Norway that
Yes.
I never, and Norway I consider my home country. I never imagined they had that there. So at some
Right.
point we'll talk about that one as well, because that one really intrigued me. But there are quite a few of these that we have come up that are from the other countries.
Yes. And I don't know if it's they're more accepting to discuss it or why you have to dig so hard here in the States to find it. But there's definitely a clear difference of availability in finding these.
Well, even this one that we're going to talk about today is not that far from us. And I
No.
don't remember ever hearing anything about this. And this was actually what, 2011, I think it was.
Yes, I believe so. I'm looking at the article. And so this article was originally published in 2014. And if you look up, so this is talks about Latoya Ammons, and I think I'm saying that correctly.
I think so.
But she claimed that her 3 children were possessed, and they, I believe, were ranging in ages from 9 to 11. And you know, one thing as I was reading this that really came across to me is so many times, you know, people go to this and this is what happens. You know, she reached out to people. Eventually, Department of Children's Services were notified because they looked at it as a psychological thing that was going on
With the mother, yes. Yeah.
Yes. And I don't know about you, but I do not know many psychological issues that allow you to walk up a wall.
I've not heard of any.
No. So see, that's what I don't like. What don't you like, Courtney? I'm not sure what you don't like. So it says that this started in November of 2011 when the family moved into a rental house on Carolina Street in Gary, Indiana. And you know, kind of reminded me of, and I know there's been a lot of discussion about the Amityville Horror House and that being a fraud, but this starting with black flies, you know, swarming, and it was the middle of December. There really was not a reason for that.
And they had not been in the house more than a few weeks when that started to happen.
Correct. And, you know, they talk about occasionally hearing footsteps, creaky doors. And if you read through the article, and I encourage you to do, and I encourage you to research the name because there's a lot of stories on here. They, you know, reached out to churches. A lot of the churches ignored them. Eventually, they did get some help. And, you know, some of the churches were saying burning sage, doing some of these things, which initially helped, but then made it a lot worse. And I feel like when you're dealing with demonic possessions, Ellie, a lot of times that happens.
I agree. It's almost like you're trying to clear it out, but yet they're going to put you back in your place, letting them know they're in charge. So then they take it to the next level.
Yes. Anita's asking, is this the house that Ghost Hunters bought and made a movie about? I think it was called the Demon House, and there was a investigation team that did buy it, and they did film a documentary, and then I think it was demolished, is my understanding. I'm not sure if it's the same one you're talking about, but yes. So what I find interesting in this, you know, you have a police chief that has 30 some years of experience, a police department coming in saying, We've witnessed these things, and they actually have documented, I think DCS has like 900 pages of documented incidents that happened. So my question is, whether you have one event like this or we have numerous countless ones, why isn't this more mainstream in discussion for people to get help? Why do you think it's still kind of tucked in the covers?
My personal feeling is that even though there's documentation on it, there's no scientific background for it.
Right.
And we are such a science-based nation that unless there's a science behind it, nobody's going to believe it.
Right. No, that's true. And but we look at that and I agree, we are so science-based. We need that tangible. But yet even in religious communities, I grew up in a very Christian-based faith where there's some science, to prove that Jesus was an actual person and to prove some of these things. But yet there's a big metaphysical aspect to a lot of religion. So why are we so quick, even in those communities, to accept this, what we find in the Bible as spoken truth? And they talk about demons and negative entities in the Bible. Why aren't we willing to accept it when we see it mainstream? Do you think it's a fear?
I very well could be a fear, but I think that your religions have gotten less.
Yes.
They're not as populated. Back in the day, everybody went to religion of one kind or another. That's not the case anymore.
Right. That's true. That's very true. And so in this, and I'm not sure. So it talks about the children 7, 9, and 12 actually ended up being removed from the home. But from what I've read, it sounded like DCS actually contacted a religious entity where they came and performed exorcisms on both the mother and the children.
Yes. Actually, if I remember correctly, I think they did 2 or 3 of them all together before they finally felt they cleared it out.
What do you think attracts, especially in cases, because we see infestation, we see these times when low-level entities and energies start to integrate into people's lives, but this is really on the very extreme end of things. What do you think perpetrates it, especially to affect and afflict a whole family to get to that extreme?
There could be a number of reasons for it. It could be it's just the way their life path went, what they chose when they came. It could be they agreed upon it before they came to deal with it. Again, maybe they dealt with it in a past life and they chose to bring it forward again. And if you think about it, the earth is really changing. Gaia is changing. Yes. Everybody on the planet has been changing, and we're all kind of going in another direction here, I feel. And it's a direction that's for the good, but then the evil's doesn't want it to go in that direction.
Right.
So they may be popping up more and more.
I like that, because I personally has always resonated to me that here it's this good versus evil. It's a push-pull, trying to find a balancing act between the two things fighting for control.
Right.
And another thing I think is really important to point out is this family, they had mental health professionals come in and do testing, and none of those things came back as issues. So to me, that's part of that science, right? You have the mental health professionals coming in, you have these other agencies that are coming in. Is that your cat?
It is.
Okay, because I keep hearing it, and that's fine, but with everything that's gone on this morning, I'm like, I hope that's coming from Ellie's house.
She just started. So if you had something before that, we got to check again, because she just started meowing.
Oh, goodness. Well, we'll move on past that. So one thing I want to talk about is the different afflictions that each of these parties seem to have. You know, they talk about, especially the boys seem to have more afflictions than some of the others, walking up walls, you know, and we all heard of parkour, right? This is not parkour, walking straight up a wall backwards, doing a flip and landing in front of somebody, contortions, you know, the physical changings of your faces, you know, and it's so frustrating because, and I know Ellie and I have seen it in mainstream news too, where you see people who say, well, somebody is possessed, they not a professional, attempt an exorcism on them without professional advisement, and somebody dies, somebody's hurt. Ellie, how do you think people can decipher between true possession and something paranormal going on versus maybe their own paranoia? Because we know there are people who have mental illnesses that, look at David Berkowitz, you know, that are projecting these things because they think people are possessed when really it's their own affliction that's making them think that, and it's not the case.
But is it really their own?
Right,
really,
right. It's, yes,
you know,
I know what you're saying. Mm-hmm.
That there still could be something from the outside that's
Right.
doing this with them. It's hard to say because everybody is different. And every human has a different vulnerability to them.
Yes.
And a different strength to them. So, you know, if they've got something that's trying to cause problems and issues with them, depending upon their own strength as to what level the entity can do.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. That leads me to, and this was an ideology, I guess, that just kind of popped in my head a few days ago, but talking about, you know, looking at somebody like David Berkowitz or anybody that intentionally kills or inflicts pain on somebody, could it be possible, because I feel like we are all empathic, that these people are just more empathic to negative influences?
Very well could be.
I mean, and not to simplify, and not saying that people are not accountable for their own actions, but is there something else going on? It's just, I don't know, something that popped in.
It can get very deep here.
Yes, it can
really go deep here. I truly feel that a lot of issues that are going on in our world with all the mass shootings and things, and you'll hear them say, I heard somebody tell me to do this.
Right.
But then again, we go back to the science base that there's something wrong with that person, where there is for an entity to come into play, but I still don't negate that it's not an entity involved with it.
So then, you're right. This could go very deep because is it a mental illness or is it a spiritual affliction? And is one separate from the other?
Or a mixture of both.
Right.
There needs to be something going on with the person to allow the attachment in.
Yes, that makes sense.
That they're not totally healed.
Yeah, and who of us are? You know, even us that are working, exactly. You know, we all have our vulnerabilities. So I think that's a great point. So before we go to our first break, Ward, please share your thought, and we will jump to that when we come back after the break. And good morning to everybody who's been popping in. I am going to have Ellie check her private chats while we go to break. When we come back, though, I do want Ellie to discuss the article that she was referring to and found very interesting, too, because I feel like that needs to be discussed. But before we leave, I do want to end prior to the break with Psalms 91, because I think this is important. And because every time I come to this verse, something weird happens, which is why I feel it's very important to share this. And it says, "You will not fear the terror of night, nor the arrow that flies by day, nor the pestilence that stalks in the darkness, nor the plague that destroys at midday." And so just remember, as long as you have Spirit with you, you can always overcome these things. We'll be right back in just a moment.
The Body Code is a revolutionary method of energetic healing developed by Dr. Bradley Nelson, which allows us to quickly and easily identify specific imbalances that seem to underline chronic ill health, acute and chronic pain and discomfort, dysfunction, and stress. Ellie energetically connects with the subconscious of the client. Psychic medium Ellie Weisensell is a medical intuitive and energy healer and a certified body code practitioner. She identifies and clears energetic imbalances within the body and energy field. Contact Ellie at the website below, and Ellie can work remotely from a distance, by phone, online, video chat. There's no need to travel to an office. Remember, the Body Code is safe for humans and animals. Contact Ellie today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back. It is 23 past the hour, and you are listening to WLTK-DB, Let's Talk Radio. And I am your co-host, actually, for this, because this is definitely an Ellie and I conversation. So this is a Chat with Charlie special in the mix, where Ellie and I get together. We review weird news articles that you send in, and also some that we find. So I do want to remind you, feel free to pop in articles. Feel free to email those articles directly to chatwcharlie@gmail.com, and we'll review them and set them up to be discussed. So I know you guys notice Ellie is missing, but she will be back in just a second. She had a couple things that she had to look at. So in this context, and I want to stress this, if you feel like somebody is being afflicted negatively, seek the professional help first. These are not things that you want to take on your own. These are not things that you don't want to try to perform an exorcism. You don't want to take those things on, because there can be negative things that happen. There can be adverse effects. And so I just want you all to know there are people you can reach out to, churches to reach out to try to get help. Don't take it on yourself. Continue to try to find help and reaching out to people. And it is becoming more mainstream. You can have exorcisms. The Vatican is opening up doors. They just started working with 250 priests to start getting them certified in exorcisms. There's different agencies. So this is not anything you should try on your own under any circumstances. All right, Ellie, I want to talk about your article now.
Is that the one that you were just mentioning about the priest?
I'm not sure which one. The one about the Vatican courses?
Yes.
Yes, I was. That's funny. I didn't even know that was the one. See, look it. We must be psychic.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So
and that was a few years ago as well. I didn't pull that one up because I wasn't sure which one you were going to talk about. Okay. So let me pull that one to the side so I can have it here.
Yeah. And I'll let you please take the lead on this one, because this is one that you, I believe, had submitted because you had found it interesting.
Well, I had submitted it. This was back in 2018, where the Vatican decided that they've had the exorcism had dwindled over a number of years. And so they weren't teaching the priests how to do exorcisms.
Right.
And then the numbers started going up. And then all of a sudden they were doing more exorcisms than what they had priests that could be doing them. And so one year, which was back in 2018, they decided they needed to go back into teaching their priests how to do this.
Yes.
And they actually opened up the door and they taught 250 priests how to do them in 50 different countries.
Which really, 250 sounds huge. But when you look at all the countries, that's not a lot of people.
No, that's really not when you're looking at all the different countries.
Yes. And, I like, as I'm scanning through this article, and this is kind of what I was stressing when you were coming back from break, is, they say exorcisms remain controversial because of its depiction in current culture and horror films. And there have been several cases of abuse linked to exorcisms. So that's why I just was stressing to people, find somebody trained, find somebody that, has a viable resource for this.
Yes, exactly. Even I have never done an exorcism,
Right.
although I've not come across what I would consider, I've dealt with some really dark ones, but not what I would consider a demon.
Correct.
So yeah, you definitely want to make sure if you're going down that road where you think you really have a demon, you need to bring in the experts.
Yes, absolutely. And so it says it was a week-long Vatican course, and it is the only international series of lectures of its kind, and it was called Exorcism and the Prayer of Liberation. And it says that priests attending actually have doubled since it started in 2005.
Yeah, well, the numbers went up.
Yes, absolutely.
So you've got the church believing in it more and more again, but still, as far as your like the police department and things like that, there is still the science based.
Yes, absolutely. And I find interesting in reading this article too that could this be, we had a different pope, and we had Pope Francis, and it says in there, he told the priests they must not hesitate to refer parishioners, to exorcists if they suffer from genuine spiritual disturbances. Do you think that the support in bringing back these courses in exorcisms and support have to do with having had that shift in popes at the time?
I'm going to say I do. I mean, if you've got the Catholic that, well, they've always believed in it, but if they're actually teaching their priests how to do all this again, and they're seeing the shift and the changes, that's the direction. If you feel you've got something going on, that's kind of the direction you want to go.
Yes. Yeah. I agree with that. And one thing, and actually I'm a little, and you guys will understand as I'm reading through this article, as we're going back and forth in the conversation, that frustrates me a little bit. I understand it, but it frustrates me, is they say that Italian priest, and I'm not going to try to say his name because I will butcher it, told Vatican News that the growing use of tarot cards and sorcery had also led to a renewed demand for exorcisms. And okay, so this is where it frustrates me, right? Because here, what are we doing, right? Who are we as individuals? But yet, I understand, because I know people within the field, Ellie and myself and our colleagues who have worked very hard, and we work in the light with these things. But like any tool, I can use a hammer to do a good deed, or I can use a hammer to whack somebody upside the head. It is the same tool being used in different ways. And I feel like that statement is very broad, but I have seen people get involved with some of these things that have opened doors. What are your feelings on that, Ellie?
I totally agree, because I'm surprised he said tarot cards instead of the Ouija board, because the Ouija board's always the one that gets the black mark here.
Right.
I agree with you, Steph. It is not the tool itself. It's the person and how they use that tool.
Right.
Because even though the Ouija board has a definite black mark, to me, it's just another tool. And I've used the Ouija board numbers of the times, and I've got a couple of them, and I've never had problems or issues with them. So it's not the tool itself. It's the people and how they use it.
Right. Yeah. And so that's where, I find that frustration, because I read articles like this and I feel hope. I feel hope that people understand. And then there's that comment and I'm like, oh,
it's like one little comment. Yes.
Like, dang it. So that was just kind of a side thing. So yeah, I totally agree that it is definitely how you use the tool and what you use the tool for. And if you guys, I encourage you, this is another one that came from BBC News, to hop in, because there's some really good articles contained and links within that. There's discussion about an exorcism in Italy and all those things. So if this is something that you're drawn to look at, I encourage that you look at it. So it says that the Catholic Church carried out its first major update to the rules surrounding exorcisms in 1614. So this has been a long time, really, that they have believed in these exorcisms. What do you think? And I would be interested to see, and maybe we can dig and see if we can find anything on statistics, times when they have ebbed and flowed, right? Because like anything, it's going to ebb and flow.
Yes. Yeah, that would be interesting. We'll have to do some digging on that and see if we can figure some of that out, because I would think depending upon what's going on with everybody on the earth, and especially like we just went through a pandemic, and something the majority of us have never been through before, how that reflects upon Satan and things like that. So it'd be interesting. We'd have to do some digging and see if we can figure some of that out.
I agree. Because, I want to click on this other link about where exorcisms are on the rise and kind of read through that, because I feel like that will have some pull in. But I do see we have a couple comments here from viewers. And so Jackie says, do you find a correlation between the decline of practicing organized religion and a rise in the need for cleansing and darkness making its way into the world more easily? I think what she's asking is, in the decline of organized religion, that because fewer people believe in organized religion, is this leaving a hole for that shift and more darkness to come in?
Now I'm going to play the devil's advocate with this one, because I'm a Catholic. I was born and raised a Catholic, but I never went to the Catholic school. I don't go to church. I do believe in God and source, and I abide by all that, but I'm not a true devout Catholic.
Okay.
So I'm not seeing a correlation with that. Doesn't mean there isn't one, though, because I'm just basing it off of my own life here.
Okay.
So Steph, what do you think?
I do feel, I kind of feel the same way, because maybe even though people are not in an organized religion, I feel like spiritual connections have grown. And so I look at it more as there's more spiritual awakening and connections being made, that's influencing, it's almost like, are they losing their grip? And so are they coming in stronger? And I think, to me, that's more how I see it. As more people become connected, more people become awakened, the negative energies, the demonic side, however you want to look at it, is like, we got to fight harder. We got to get in there more. We have to influence more. So that's how I see it.
And that's a good point to make, because I would agree with you on that one. I think you're seeing more of the demonic side now, because of people are becoming more spiritualist.
Yeah. I agree. I agree with that comment as well. Okay, so Dina says, with more people trying to become in tune with their intuition, could that open up more people to be tricked by spirits that are dark?
It's always a possibility.
Yeah.
It all depends upon the individual person and their strengths and what they believe in.
Absolutely. And I tell, anybody, and I know Dina personally, and thank you so much for tuning in, Dina. When we are awakening to our abilities, when we are trying to become in tune, how does that resonate with you? If you have a spirit coming in and it's saying, I'm grandma and I want to help you, does that resonate that way? Trust your intuition when you're connecting. I know even a youth that I was advocating for and working with had told me they regularly saw a little girl and they liked connecting with the little girl and playing with her. And I said, well, can I talk to her? And immediately this child that I was advocating for said, no, they'll only talk to me. Well, that's a problem. That's not a little girl. So things like that, watching for red flags and things that don't resonate is my best advice. Because I do think it can happen.
And I agree with that. Actually, look at it as the statement that you made, Steph, was when you've got something coming in like that, think of it like a scammer right off the bat.
Yeah, right.
Until you can differentiate to really know if it's a scam or not.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. It's, picture it as your cell phone and it's a number you don't know. Are you going to answer that phone? Or are you going to be like, my warranty is fine? So I like
leave a message.
Right. Leave a message. Okay. So Erica says, do you think he mentioned tarot cards because they have people seeking answers outside of the church through a different way to communicate with spirit?
Well, he might have mentioned tarot cards because they've gotten so popular.
Right. And they're easy access, right?
They're very easy access. You can buy them. You can go into a bookstore and buy them. You can order them online. They're really easy access. Who is the one female medium that actually, I can't think of her name. She created tarot cards and she did mostly oracle cards.
Oh, I don't know what her name is.
Doreen
I'm
Virtue.
horrible with that.
Isn't it Doreen Virtue?
Maybe.
I think it's Doreen.
I'm not helpful.
I actually have a number for her cards, but she was a big medium and very well known.
Okay.
And created a lot of oracle cards. And she got back into the church. It is Doreen. Thank you, Jessica. She got back into the church and got out of mediumship and actually did not allow her cards to be sold anymore.
Okay.
Because she saw that as becoming an evil thing instead of a good thing.
Absolutely.
So
well,
again,
I know
very individual based.
It is. And I know people who in the church where it's more, I don't want to say extreme religion because I don't mean it that way, intense, more Old Testament based maybe, but they won't even play cards with regular playing cards because regular playing decks have been used in divination. And, so, but really, I mean, do you drink tea? Because I could use a tea leaf for divination. So it's all perception.
It is very much all perception.
Okay. Ward says, most don't listen to what they hear, or the ones who hear will not listen. But what if someone thought to not hear? Would we then be able to listen?
You can actually tune yourself off.
Yes.
You can close the door where you do not have them coming in. And that's again an individual based person and deciding if they want to listen or not.
Right. Right.
And in our society today, we live such a fast-paced life that most people have so much tuned out that they're not listening.
Absolutely. I agree with that 100%. I don't have anything to add to that other than if you are choosing to tune yourself out, just know that doesn't always work in the long run.
I agree with that. If you're meant to hear them, if you agreed to hear them when you came into this lifetime,
right,
they won't stop. Yes.
Right. So, and I like, Jackie commented, I'm good at tuning them out. And she's lying. So there's that, guys. There's that. Jessica says, I think people have always been spiritual, but we weren't aware of how much because we didn't have the technology we have now to be aware of it. Then a lot of people are too shy to express it. And now that we have this technology, they are opening up more.
That's a good point.
It is. I think it's finding your tribe, right?
It is. It is. And I agree. Technology can have something to do. It doesn't have to, but it can. And more people are opening up to this spiritual side.
Absolutely. And I think, for me, Jessica, until I started and technology had a huge part of it, of doing classes online, I wouldn't have met a lot of my tribe. I wouldn't have met Ellie. I wouldn't have met people who are like-minded and different-minded in so many ways, but yet we are connected in non-apparent ways, if that makes sense. So I do agree that technology plays a big role. So I wanted to go back because I did click on the country where exorcisms are on the rise, which was a little link in the last article. And they say, does God exist? Does the devil exist? The Catholic Church believes they both do. And some priests say they are currently having an immense battle in Mexico. And what it goes on to talk about is definitely a lot of the drug wars that are going down in Mexico. Some of those things, human sacrifices, gruesome drug-related violence. And it actually talks about seeking that. It says, we believe that behind all these big and structural evils, there is a dark agent, and his name is the demon. That is why the Lord wants to have here a ministry of exorcisms and liberation for the fight against the devil. And I haven't had time to read completely through all of these, but it also talks about a lot of cults, the cult of Saint Death, and things going on in Mexico, where they are seeing an increase in exorcisms and violent acts. What are your thoughts on that, Ellie?
I believe it's happening. And I believe there's cults even here in the U.S. And I believe it's been around forever. It's just because of technology, we're seeing and hearing more of it. We've got news stations that run 24/7. We've got magazines out there. We got the internet. We can Google to find stuff.
Yeah.
It's just becoming, I truly believe it's always been there. Yeah. It's just becoming easier to find that information and to hear about it.
I agree. And I do believe, in places, in Mexico where they are facing some declining social economical situations, you find groups will split. You become more faith-based, or you become more based in, maybe the cults, where you're trying to appease or appeal to whatever entity to improve your situation. And I think you see that a lot in other cultures. All right. On that note, what are we saying here, guys? Spirituality is everywhere. It's tucked, it's hidden in the folds of everyday news. And maybe sometimes it just is called to us to look a little bit deeper under the cover and see what is actually going on, not just taking everything at face value, but paying attention to these little stories that are tucked away. So,
and good point. Always take it with a grain of salt.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So on that note, we are going to take our last station break. When we come back, Ellie and I will pull a couple of cards for the week ahead, and I'll let you know what is coming up on the Chat with Charlie show. We'll see you back in just a moment.
Paranormal Party. Based in Wisconsin is a small paranormal investigation team that believes in the stigma of those who believe in the afterlife. Paranormal Party strives to bring positive energy into all their investigations. They have investigated several locations, including haunted homes, jails, asylums, schools, and more. Every team has a tale, so let Jamie Lynn, Joe, and Kasaya share not only their experiences, but also their stories. Paranormal Party. Contact them today. Just search Paranormal Party WI online.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Chat with Charlie. If you are just tuning in, it is about 46 past the hour, and you caught us here on WLTK-DB Let's Talk Radio. And today we did our monthly special called In the Mix with Ellie, who is also a psychic medium. I hope you guys will check her out. I will share her information on my page later today because Ellie is awesome. She's awesome, guys. I just love her to pieces.
Thank you.
So,
you too.
Oh my. So coming up here next month on the 8th, we will have Jennifer Lee. And if you guys have caught the No Agenda with Mike and Jen, that is the very same Jen who is going to be joining us. And she's actually going to be coming in to join us to discuss forensic mediumship, using your abilities to help other people through their suffering. And that's just another way that we can use our abilities to do that. So it's a topic that is very dear to my heart. So I hope you will all tune in for that. On the 15th, psychic medium Kim Coots is going to be joining us. Kim, I just can't wait for her to share her story with you guys, how she used some pain and tragedy within her own life to become more in tune with her abilities and to work in servitude with spirit. And then the 29th of June, Ellie is going to be back because it will be the last Thursday of every month that she will be here to join us. So please look for those articles, look for those crazy stories that you want some explanation on, that you want to discuss, and send them over to chatwcharlie@gmail.com. Ellie and I will discuss them, and you may find that we talk about it on the show. All right, so we're going to pull a couple cards just to give you guys some inspiration. Ellie, do you want to start?
I can. As I was shuffling, I had one pop out. So to me, it's like they want me to talk about this one. So I'm currently using The Sacred Forest by Denise Lynn. Love this deck. It's an oracle deck. And the card that popped out was called Crystal Cave and Trust. Yeah. And I feel like because of what we're talking about today and continuing, we'll talk about going forward. Yep. It's a form. Crystals can be a form of protection. Yes. And you can easily Google crystals to find out what ones they claim are protections, but you can actually make almost any crystal you choose that you resonate with to be a protection for yourself. And then underneath that crystal cave, it says trust. And you need to learn to trust yourself. So if you're hearing those voices, trust your gut instinct and knowing that if there ones to be listening to or not. So you need to learn to trust yourself. That's a hard one that we all pretty much had to go through and learn to trust. Yes. Yeah. And some of us took a whole lot longer than others. Yeah.
Some of us are still working on it.
So that was a card that flew out for me.
I love it. I love it.
Here.
So it's funny. I pulled out that deck, Ellie, and I actually put it back, and I grabbed the Soul Cards 2 deck.
Okay.
So that's what I'm working with. And so when I was shuffling, the card that popped out for me, and these cards, for those of you who are familiar with them, they don't tell you what the card is. There's no numbers. There's nothing. So this is the card. And what was interesting is as soon as I tuned into the card, the first thing that I noticed, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's a mountain. And I didn't so much see the swirl as much as I saw what to me looked like a sunset coming up over the mountain. And so with this card, what really resonates first is I feel like so many of us are facing hurdles. So many of us are trying to get to that pinnacle top of the mountain, right? And that sunset, to me, that sun shining over the mountain, just indicates like that goal, that what we're trying to reach. But going over the mountain, going up the mountain, it's a journey. You are not just starting out on your journey and that day you reach the top of the mountain. It's about the climb. It's about working your way, different steps, right, to get to that top of the mountain. And so I feel like Spirit is really coming in with a reminder, saying it's about the journey. Yes, we know you have your focus here. We understand that. But if there was no journey, if there was no work and there was no continue to push ourselves to reach that pinnacle, we wouldn't appreciate reaching our goal. So remember, really, the blessings are in that everyday journey, in those everyday steps that you continue to fight and reach and keep climbing your mountain. And so I feel like for me, and I know you can see the face, you can see the spinning, but for me, really what is coming out of this card is to keep your focus on the journey. The goal's not going anywhere. The sun's there every day, guys. The goal is there. It's in the journey.
And I like that. And I'd like to add a little something to it. Is that the journey is also about learning.
Yes.
And remembering what part of that journey is that you're learning your things on.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Would you like to pull one more card, Ellie? We could each do two.
Okay.
We got a little bit of time left.
I'm still using the same deck, and this one's Air, Spirit, Knowledge. And I feel like this is also resonating off of the one that Steph just had, because she's in a boat.
Yeah.
And it's a find out where I'm at here.
She's
in a boat and she's up in the air, so she's also on a journey. She's also on a journey and knowledge, to know that there is knowledge out there, not only within yourself, but also out there. And it's just a matter of looking for it to find it. It's around us all over the place. So it's just a matter of keeping yourself open and accepting things in and learning as you go.
I love that. And so all the topics that we had today, all the noises, things going on at all of our houses that we did not get into topics with you guys, from my house to Ellie's house to the producer's house during the show. These are heavy topics. These are conversations not to be taken lightly. That's when we tell people, especially if you're pulled and you work within the negative entity community, I guess you could call it. It's not something to take lightly. And when I pulled this next card, it actually took me back a second. And so when this card came up, I immediately saw Mary and you know, and the halo around her. And as I look at this, I have goosebumps going through my body, because as I look at this, what I hear is religion doesn't matter, right? The religion that you hold doesn't matter. The belief system that you hold is what matters. And the power, right? A lot of times when we've talked so much about the Catholic Church, we refer to Jesus, we refer to Mother Mary, we refer to these figureheads within religion. But we carry that within us. And I feel like that's what we need to understand. No matter where you fall in religion, if you believe that God created all man, if you feel that source brought us here, no matter where you fall, the thing to remember is that we were created with that energy. That energy is within you. And so those figureheads, those things are all within you. And I feel like people have to be reminded of that. I feel like we have so many times in our lives where we do not feel empowered, but you have to remember that's within you. So I hope that makes sense. So on that note, Ellie, do you have anything you want to add, say to our viewers before we head out? Tell them again where they can find you in case they're just coming across you for the first time, which would be sad. That would be sad.
Well, but it happens. I am on Facebook and I have a website. So you can find me either or that way. So keep the light shining. I'm just going to say, keep the light shining.
Yeah.
Always be optimistic about life and enjoy it, and try not to let the outside world bring you down.
Yeah. I love that. It's beautiful. Yes. I'm going to add to just what Ellie said and be the light, right? Be the light that you want others to be. And remember, send in these stories of the metaphysical sneaking into society. We would love to talk about them. We would love to hear your opinion on some of those topics and give you ours. So we will see you all here. I will see you guys next week, and you will see Ellie here in about 3 weeks. So be sure to tune in. Also, if you guys have been watching my page, and I know I was talking about Mike and Jen with No Agenda, we're going to be doing a gallery. So watch for information on that. It's going to be a free gallery, but it is limited to 22 seats. And we are not putting the link out until about 10 minutes before the show starts. So once we have those 22 people, the show is locked and we're going to go on from there. So very excited about some of these things coming up. You all have a wonderful week and be the inspiration that others need. We'll talk to you later.
The truth is here and now on WLTK-DB Talk Radio at WLTK-DB.com.